In the mid-1970s, two young men in California were experimenting with wires, keyboards, and circuit boards in a small suburban garage. They had no fancy offices, no corporate funding, and no idea they were about to change the world. Most people thought they were crazy. Who would buy from two kids without a business plan, funds, or experience? And how could something born out of a cluttered garage compete with tech giants like IBM? But they believed in something bigger. That technology could be human, simple, and life-changing. That belief would ignite a revolution, create one of the most iconic brands on Earth, and transform a garage project into a $3 trillion empire. This is the story of Apple, how it went from a dusty garage to dominating the global economy, one bold idea at a time. It all began in 1976. When 21-year-old Steve Jobs and 26-year-old Steve Wozniak decided to build their own computers. Wozniak had designed a simple yet revolutionary machine, the Apple I. Jobs, ever the visionary, saw potential far beyond a hobby project. He convinced Wozniak that this could be more than a side experiment. It could be a company. With help from a third partner, Ron Wayne, Apple Computer was born. Jobs sold his Volkswagen van to fund it. Wozniak sold his calculator. They built and hand-assembled computers from that tiny garage in Los Altos. But the very first Apple computer was not a sleek, polished device. It was a wooden box of wires and chips, sold to local computer stores. Yet it sparked something, a glimpse of how technology could be personal, approachable, and human. And that led to the next big step. A machine that would put Apple on the map, the Apple II. The Apple II exploded onto the market in 1977. It was colorful, easy to use, and came at a time when competitors still looked like industrial machines. Within a few years, Apple was worth hundreds of millions. But as fast as the company rose, the cracks began to show. Success had turned Apple into a battlefield of ideas. Steve Jobs wanted control, total control, over every detail, from the design to the message. He clashed with executives, argued with engineers, and demanded perfection. By 1983, Apple brought in a new CEO, John Sculley, from Pepsi. Jobs famously asked him, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" Sculley said yes, but he would soon regret it, because what happened next shocked everyone. Apple launched the Macintosh in 1984 with one of the most iconic ads in history. It promised to free people from Big Brother, a not-so-subtle jab at IBM. The Mac was revolutionary, but sales disappointed. Tension exploded inside Apple. And in 1985, Steve Jobs, the man who had founded the company, was forced out. But what happens when a company loses the soul that brought it to life? After Jobs' departure, Apple drifted. The company kept releasing new computers, but without a clear direction. Products like the Newton, the Lisa, and the Macintosh Portable flopped. Profits fell. Competitors like Microsoft surged ahead, and Apple seemed trapped in its own confusion. By the mid-1990s, the company was nearly bankrupt. At one point, Apple's market share had dropped to less than 5%. Rumors swirled that it might be sold or shut down entirely. But then came the twist no one expected. In 1997, Apple bought Next, the computer company Steve Jobs had started after leaving Apple. And with that acquisition, Jobs returned home. The man they had once pushed out was now back to save the company that had lost its soul. When Jobs returned, Apple was bleeding money. His first move was to simplify everything. He cut the product line from dozens of models to just 4. He shut down unprofitable divisions. He focused the company on design, clarity, and innovation. In 1998, Apple launched the iMac. It was colorful, friendly, and nothing like the dull beige computers everyone else was selling. The iMac was a statement. It said Apple was alive again. But Jobs wanted more than survival. He wanted Apple to shape the future of technology. So, in 2001, He unveiled the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket, he said. The world was hooked. Within a few years, Apple was no longer just a computer company. It was a cultural movement, and what happened next redefined the entire technology world. In 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." The audience didn't realize it yet, but that moment marked the start of a new era. The iPhone was more than a phone. It was a computer, a camera, a music player, and a communication device all in one. It changed how people interacted with technology. Sales exploded. Within months, competitors scrambled to catch up. Within years, entire industries shifted. The camera industry, the GPS industry, even social media itself. Apple had created a device that defined the modern world. By 2010, with the release of the iPad, Apple had become the most valuable company on the planet. But even success has its shadows. As Apple grew, critics accused it of secrecy, labor controversies, and ecosystem control. Yet none of it slowed the company down. In 2011, Steve Jobs passed away after a long battle with cancer. The news shook the world. People lined up outside Apple stores to leave flowers, candles, and thank you notes. For many, it felt like the end of an era. Tim Cook, Jobs' quiet and disciplined deputy, took over as CEO. Many doubted whether Apple could thrive without Jobs' genius. But Cook surprised everyone. He focused on stability, operations, and long-term strategy. Under his leadership, Apple didn't fade. It soared even higher. New products like the Apple Watch and AirPods became cultural icons. Services like Apple Music, iCloud, and the App Store brought in billions in recurring revenue. And in 2018, Apple became the first company in history to hit a $1 trillion valuation. 2 years later, it reached $2 trillion. By 2022, it had crossed the unimaginable, $3 trillion. But how does a company that started in a garage end up worth more than most countries' economies? Apple's power isn't just about technology. It's about emotion. The company sells identity, lifestyle, and trust. When people buy an iPhone, they are not just buying a device. They are buying into a philosophy of design, privacy, and creativity. Apple has mastered the art of loyalty. Its products are connected, its branding is flawless, and its message is consistent. Innovation with elegance. But that perfection comes at a cost. Apple has faced criticism for controlling its ecosystem, limiting competition, and relying on global supply chains that raise ethical questions. Still, consumers remain loyal. And perhaps that is Apple's greatest magic trick, turning technology into desire. Apple's story is not just about gadgets or profits. It is about what happens when creativity meets obsession, when risk meets belief, and when vision meets execution. Steve Jobs once said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." And Apple proved him right. From a small suburban garage to a $3 trillion empire, Apple didn't just change technology, it changed humanity's relationship with it. And that leaves one final question. If Apple could rewrite the rules of the world once, what revolution will it spark next? Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.